it was an offer for full occupancy for the hotel for a year. Then I realised what it was. It was an absolutely bona fide suggestion that we fill up Camelot Castle with these people that are coming in.
You thought this was a joke at first.
Well, I absolutely thought it was a joke. So I called up Nigel Farage, actually. I said, Nigel, I'm never going to believe this. And Nigel said... And he, of course, then gave me all the figures. I said, this is just shocking. I sort of looked at what would happen to the local community and decided to say no. I don't agree with the government policy of putting illegal migrants in hotels. And then the other most alarming thing was, I think there is a group insanity. I love this country so much. Let's say we fail to handle it this year. And this just keeps happening for 20 years. I don't think this country would be recognisable.
61% of regular Heretics viewers haven't subscribed yet. Can I ask you a favour? If you love these fearless conversations, hit subscribe now because it's free, takes 2 seconds and powers our mission. Join hundreds of thousands of fellow heretics, subscribe and let's question everything together. John Mappin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you here. Right, so I want to get straight to the story. Tell me about the moment you read a letter with something of an indecent proposal.
Well, as I think I've said before, I genuinely thought it was a joke. We had a letter from one of these companies that arranges the hotels for I don't know what we're supposed to call them. I think they are sort of boat people that are coming in. Anyway, I didn't really understand it, and it was an offer for full occupancy for the hotel for a year. And, as a hotelier, where you're sort of constantly struggling with occupancy rates, I thought, well, this can't be true. And then I realized what it was. And I called the gentleman up that had written to me. And it was the most bizarre conversation. And it indeed was an absolutely bona fide suggestion that we fill up Camelot Castle, which is, we're not a 5-star hotel, but we're certainly a luxurious location to stay at with sort of these people that are coming in. I think technically they are illegal because they are breaking the law. And once I realized what it was, and I understood it, I realized the consequences. Actually, I think President Trump yesterday tweeted out that intelligence is the ability to predict the future. And I think that's absolutely true. And I sort of looked at what would happen to the local community and decided to sort of say no, but I also decided to go public about it. So I called up Nigel Farage, actually. I said, Nigel, I'm never going to believe this. And Nigel said, actually, I would believe it because there's a number of other hotels that this is occurring with. And he, of course, then gave me all the figures. And I said, well, this is just shocking. And he said, well, would you mind coming on GB News and talking about it? And I thought about it and I thought, well, it's probably going to annoy a few people because there are some people that are very sympathetic to that cause. And I think on the whole, British people are kindly disposed towards people that are having trouble. But I also feel that if I wasn't to speak out, it would be a betrayal of a lot of people in the community that would experience negative effects as a result of this policy. And I don't agree with the government policy of putting illegal migrants in hotels, whether they be 5-star hotels or any other type of hotel.
Yeah, particularly not making a lot of the public aware that this is happening. I think people know that some hotels are being taken at the moment for illegal migrants. I don't think they understood. I don't think you have in your mind's eye a picture of the kind of hotel such as yours, Camelot Castle, which is stunning. In Cornwall. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful views. It is the most typified archetypal English southwest beauty of a place. And I don't think people have that in their mind's eye. They have maybe a sort of a travel lodge in the outskirts of, I won't say a not very nice town, lest I offend the locals from that town, but a more populated big place. They don't imagine you're... So you thought this was a joke at first, I gather.
Well, I absolutely thought it was a joke. I said, you got to be having a laugh. But no, they were absolutely serious. And so serious, in fact, after I turned them down the first time, I had another letter a few months later. And clearly, I think the government was in a position, or the people that were organising it on behalf of the government, they were struggling to find places and find, I believe something like 600 more people arrived yesterday. So, I had tea with Nigel yesterday, actually, and he said, well, there's another 2 hotels. I said, well, they're not welcome here.
Yeah, well, this is not a vote winner by anyone's standards, is it?
No.
I don't think. Even on the left, they can't expect this to be happening. I know people who worked in hotels. A friend of mine in Germany worked in a hotel there, and it wasn't quite like your hotel, but it was still a nice hotel in Berlin. And they had to have a section of it rather than the whole hotel. There's a section of it had to be devoted to migrants, and I don't know what the deal was there, if they were being paid for that, or if that was something they were obliged by the state to do. But I know that the staff then at the hotel, some quit over it, and some didn't want to be near this because they had to go and sort of tend to the migrants, and it was I without wanting to play into stereotypes, this was just how it was. It was just a fact. It was a mess, and it was things thrown everywhere, worse than any hotel guest ever. Utter mess. You got all these families living in what was a very nice hotel, whole place completely ruined. And this is what would have happened to your beautiful hotel. Well, this was one of my concerns, and of course I asked about this. I said, well, how would that work? Because Camelot Castle is listed. It's a historic building. It's probably could be argued as a national treasure. They're certainly not going to build another one. Apart from anything else, you never get planning for it these days. Yeah. But I said hypothetically, what would happen if you filled up the hotel, because they'd probably stack them in there, I should imagine. Yeah. And the place got trashed. I said, oh no, don't worry. The contract, the government would pay for the repairs. I said, well, hang on a second, that's not the government, that's the taxpayer. And I don't want to be paying as a taxpayer. I don't want my money being spent on repairs for somebody else's hotel. And so I said, well, that's not on. And then the other most alarming thing was, I said, well, how does it work with the staff, hypothetically? Because I sort of was very curious, so I sort of spent some time. They said, oh, well, you just keep 3. We've got 25 staff. Some of them have been with me 20 years. This is in a little village of probably a population of 1,500 people. So, jobs... working in a hotel even as a receptionist or even as a cleaner or whatever it is, don't necessarily grow on trees there. So I said, well, they said, oh, well, don't worry, just lay them off. We'll do meals on wheels. So they bike the food in and just clean the place once a week. Wow. I couldn't believe it. And in that moment, I saw, when you can you understand an algorithm or a mathematics, and you can just sort of extrapolate the future. And you can see the consequences, the cultural degradation that would occur. And I want to be very clear. I've talked about cultural degradation, but I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that other cultures are degraded. What I'm saying is that I like our culture and I love our country with all of its quirks and with its peculiarities. And I just like to maintain that rather than have a sudden influx of what would be in a village of 1,500 people. You're talking about
almost perhaps a 30 or 20% shift in demographic. And the other thing, of course, as you realise, is I did ask about this. I said, well, what happens? Are the people guarded to stop them leaving? And it turns out they do have security. The security is to stop the public coming in.
Oh, because people take videos.
Yes.
To show what's happening.
Yeah. There's a couple of, what is it? There's an amazing YouTube channel called Truth Hurts 101 or something. Right. And, you tune into this, you can actually see, because they go into these hotels. You can actually get there was one hotel they went into the other day, was the Copthorne in Sussex, just outside Gatwick. I know that hotel. And it's absolutely a changed phenomena. And you wonder what the local people around there are doing. And of course, the other thing we've learned is that real estate values next to these hotels have dropped by roughly 30%. Well, imagine if you've invested in, you've saved up your whole life to buy your family home or whatever, and you move into a place and you think, well, because there's a lovely hotel next door, you can go around there for dinner one evening.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the value of your real estate has just tanked.
God.
Because are you going to buy a new family home next? They say that, these hotels will just be filled for a year. But I think you and I know that rolling contract would continue to roll.
Yeah. It doesn't just go back to being a hotel afterwards.
Well, what's happening to the 600 that came in yesterday?
Did you know that illegal migrants will no longer be able to cross to the UK from Germany thanks to a new deal between the two countries? I didn't, but I do now, thanks to today's sponsor, and I'm so grateful they exist. Ground News. Ground News is the only place I go for news now because it's the only place I found that actually tells you where the news is from, who the source is, and how biased it might be. Let's take a look at this story about Germany stopping smugglers on boats from getting into the UK. Ground News has 44 articles covering it, and you can see that these sources lean right, whereas Germany's Der Spiegel leans left, so you'll get a different slant. I love this tool, the bias distribution. You can see that it's a story the left simply aren't covering. This tool is essential to see what each side is trying to hide. And just as important is some introspection with my news bias. That's the only way to know whether you're missing fascinating perspectives. I use it every day. I couldn't do this job without it. I insist you give it a try. You won't regret it. Go to ground.news/Andrew to access diverse perspectives and uncover the truth. Subscribe through my link for 30% off unlimited access this month. That's ground.news/Andrew.
That is the tragedy of it all. It is the potential of cultural degradation. And I think it's a moment to reflect on where you can sort of imagine where the country would be if you don't handle this in a year. Let's say we fail to handle it this year, but then we fail to handle it in 5 years or in 10 years or in 20 years. And it just keeps happening for 20 years. Where does it take us? And I don't think this country would be recognizable from where we are today. And so that's why I said to Nigel, you know what, I'm going to get a shellacking. I'm sure I'm going to upset somebody over this. But I do think it's my duty to communicate about it. And as you know, I deliberated long and hard about coming on your podcast, even though there's no intention here to have me do anything else and explain to you what happened.
Yeah. With regards to cultural degradation, as you say, I have great sympathy for many of the Spanish, for example, who consider us coming over there to an extent degrading their culture.
Well, I do absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you got to understand it from the other side as well. And I think you do. I like how you speak about this as well, because you do have sympathy for these people, as you've said, coming over here. And of course, when you think of those people, we need the video people to go in and show what's happening because we need to know what's happening. At the same time, you can imagine maybe a film about some, from the individual immigrant's perspective, and suddenly they've got this person who they don't speak the language or anything in their face with a camera. Must be
no. I can understand that, and I see it from both sides. And also, let's be completely balanced, because I think we are a fair nation. this country has a tremendous history of accepting refugees, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, but there's limits. And I think what I feel is that we've sort of reached our limit of what is acceptable. And if people are breaking the law, then they should not be here.
I wonder if this is what Liz Truss was describing as the deep state, and the people you're getting emails from. Is this part of are they the politicians, do you think, or they might be civil servants who are just part of the furniture somehow, just sort of doing a job and not thinking too far into the future?
I never really know what people mean by the deep state.
My and I don't know really either, but my understanding from what Liz was describing tends to be maybe the civil servants or those who are in government, regardless of who wins the election. They're just there working and they're doing their jobs. I mean, the politicians are there to lead them one way or another, but they sort of go, yeah, thanks, Liz. And they just sort of go and push on anyway. And they say, well,
yes,
we need to fill these immigrants. We need to put them somewhere. And that's all they're thinking of. And they're not really thinking politically.
Yeah, I think there is like a group insanity. And there are policies that have been decided upon whenever, wherever. And the group has accepted that insanity. And as opposed to sort of looking at it freshly and going, is this actually the outcome that we really want for our villages? Do we really want a village, a traditional village in Cornwall, to have its economy completely atrophied? Do we really want another 15 barbershops in your local high street doing goodness knows what? Do we really need more vape shops? And somebody has decided at some point that this was a sane policy. But the truth of the matter is, to my mind of thinking, this is insane policy. And so what we're looking at is insanity.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the tragedies of the modern world, is our inability and our fear of standing up to insanity.
I mean, I live in the southwest as well. I don't usually talk about it because I don't want people to know where I live, but I'm moving. So, I've been living in Bristol for years, and that's the southwest again. Not quite as like Cornwall, but people have an image of what Bristol is, and that Gloucestershire and Somerset and those kinds of regions. And I can tell you, I mean, we go to the local GP, nobody's speaking English in there. It's actually very hard to find anybody who does speak English in that area. You drive for 5-10 minutes, it's very hard to find anybody who is not wearing Islamic attire. This is not I don't mind skin color, who cares about that? But it is very much, this is an ideology and a culture that is very different from what you think of with Bristol. Cornwall, I've been made to understand over the years, despite being this very beautiful place, everyone thinks, I must go on holiday there. Is it one of the most impoverished areas for people living there?
It is. In fact, it has been an economically deprived area. Of course, in the old days, it was extremely wealthy because it was a producer of tin. Right. And even as early as the Phoenicians would actually come to Tintagel, and they would trade in tin.
Oh, Tintagel,
and
right.
So, well, I actually think it's got a different derivation. It's Dindigel, which actually there's an isthmus of land there. The island of Tintagel is like an island joined by a little neck of land, and Dindigel apparently means from the neck. So I don't think it's got anything to do with tin. However, there were, major tin mines there. And of course, they then closed. And the Cornish miners, went from being extremely wealthy to being not that wealthy. The land down there is not tremendously productive farmland. It is a farming community, but it's not like some other parts of the country. So it has been stressed economically. And the one thing it does have is a fantastic tourism industry, which does bring in a lot of money. But of course, Newquay, now did, which is one of the major tourist spots. Several hotels in Newquay have taken the King's shilling. And they're having problems down there.
Are they really?
They really are, yeah. They really are.
How long's that been going on for then?
Well, I've been hearing about the problems for over a year. So,
Newquay.
well, I know. I mean, this is probably the surf capital of England. I think known for their sort of spring break activities and all sorts of other festivals going on down there. It's a tragedy. And a couple of the hotels down there are having there's a couple of the big hotels there on the market, because it's completely changed the dynamic of the area. And of course it will, if you bring in, it's just the dynamic of the culture has been changed completely.
The kinds of rooms that the illegal migrants, and I'm going to actually come down in a couple of months to have a look. We're going to film something together.
Yes, well, we're looking forward to having you there.
That's going to be great. I'm really excited to see it. But so how much do a typical room or maybe the most expensive room that illegal migrants would be staying in, how much do they go for?
Maybe £350, something of that nature a night. Yes.
God.
So it's not,
it's a lot.
The Ritz, but it's
a lot.
Yeah. It's certainly a lot by Cornish standards. I mean, we can't charge London rates.
Yeah.
But
and what were you then being offered by the government? And as you pointed out, that's not the government; that's taxpayer money.
Yes.
To give this hotel to.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't let the discussions get to the point where we'd absolutely, but it was full occupancy for a year, and on a rolling contract. So it would have been considerably more than we would make usually.
That's an offer that many hotels who are not doing so well or worried all the time. If I was offered a full occupancy of my ad integrations for YouTube for the next year, it'd be very hard to turn that down. Obviously, if that meant that. Well, I don't know what the equivalent would be, but an illegal migrant would now run this podcast. Then I might say, well, hang on. But that's an offer that's very hard for a lot of people to turn down.
Well, I mean, I suppose it'd be equivalent of sort of communists taking over your platform or something.
I'd have to really sell out. Well, I now have to give out communist views.
Yes,
but I suppose some people are taken. I mean, Big Pharma and that. Some people do take that money, don't they?
Well, they do. They do. A lot of newspaper advertising is Big Pharma.
Yeah,
funnily enough, and so that you do notice people compromise, their ethics for money. But my grandmother taught me something. She was a remarkable lady. She said, "Money doesn't make men; men make money, and how you make your money is very, very important as to how you enjoy it. And it's an ill-gotten pound is not a happy thing. And I've noticed this my whole life. I'm sure you've seen the same.
I wonder if that's something you can apply once you're already at a state where you're able to put food on the table.
Well, people say that, and I suppose bare survival is bare survival, and people have to survive. And of course, they do survive doing all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. But I think it can be applied from day one. Mm. I'd like to think it could be anyway.
Oh, gosh. I know. I just think I worry about those listening who are going, God, I'm trying to I'd do anything just to break out and do what I can. And I just watched the first episode of Black Mirror. Do you ever watch that?
I've not seen that, no.
Oh, but it's a sort of dystopian series about the future. The first episode, a woman falls into a coma, and then there's sort of almost like a modern, it's a satirical look at a subscription service. And they say, we can actually fix the thing in her brain. She's in a coma. We can fix your wife's coma. We put this thing in her brain that we've invented ourselves, and you subscribe to it working. So it's £300 a month or something. And then, so they save her life and they give her this. And then 6 months later, she's getting ads. She's reading ads out without realizing she's doing it. So they say, oh, if you don't want ads, you've got to pay £600. And if you don't want it, and then to keep her alive, they end up paying thousands. The point being, they get forced to do things they would hate to do just to survive. And I can imagine being in that situation.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And people do the most ghastly things to survive.
As you would.
As you would.
Yeah.
But thankfully, we were able not to.
I take your point. If you're doing all right, you can put the food on the table, things are okay, you can look after your family. At that point, the government comes knocking, hey, we want to give this hotel to illegal migrants and it's going to ruin the economy of your local area and start to ruin the country. That's when you've got to stand up and go, look, this would be beneficial to me individually, but this is no good.
Well, absolutely. Of course, I did have a number of friends of mine who saw that my exposure on GB News and then called me the next day and said, well, actually, I've got a place. Could you give me the number? I said, absolutely not.
Anyway, I'm sure they'll find a way through.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will.
God.
It's horses for courses. It's horses for courses. I just feel that, I love this country so much, and I love the community of it, and how we stick together in the tough times, and it's very, very valuable. And I feel so strongly that to completely alter the demographic of a nation is suicidal. I really feel that strongly, and I was just very pleased to be able to have the opportunity to highlight this. Really,
are you concerned for our future? Do you think we're in big trouble?
I do think we're in big trouble. Yeah, I do, because as I said yesterday, as Mr. Trump pointed out, intelligence is the ability to predict the future. And if you take actions that are harming constantly the survival of individuals and groups and the existing population, it is inevitable the effects that one is going to witness. And I think it's one of the reasons that parties like Reform and a few of the other people that are coming onto the political stage now are getting tremendous traction. And I think it is exciting to see. It could be a little late. A friend of mine once said that Britain is an 11th hour nation, and we tend to rally at about 11:45. So, it's one of those things that we have really got to take stock of what is going on, and in whatever way is legally possible, we should communicate, and we should talk to each other. And that's one of the other things that has occurred with Camelot now. It's become a gathering point for people that believe in freedom, for people that believe in human rights, that people believe in freedom of speech. And every day we are getting the most extraordinary people turning up there, which you'll be one of them, hopefully. And because, of course, the story and the myth of King Arthur does have a role to play in the current society. It obviously started in 600, but the idea of a search for the Grail, the idea that truth might exist, the idea that somewhere out there there are answers. And I do definitely believe that there are answers out there, and that there is a way of running a country that is sane, that is sensible, that is solution-driven, and where the very best of British genius is brought to bear in order to help each other. And that's why we, as a family, bought Camelot Castle in the first place. You have to have a vision if you're going to decide to buy Camelot Castle and park yourself on a cliff in the middle of Cornwall. There has to sort of be a reason for it. And our purpose has always been to use it as a gathering point for ideas. We came across a cure for dyslexia the other day. Most remarkable. I'll show it to you when you come down. It is the most remarkable. It turns out there is no reason at all for anybody to experience learning difficulties at all. Subject to a physical disability. Let's say they've been, have a physical problem with the brain. But that's an extraordinary recovery. I came across an extraordinary cure for depression. You know,
what do you mean by coming across them?
Well, I'm a bit of a researcher, and I collect up, various different. I stay in touch with various different people, and I'm always interested in new ideas. And these are things that, again, there are people that are profiting hugely from the sales of psychiatric drugs, but it turns out that they're actually not needed, and that depression is a curable thing, and it's these things are very, very interesting to me. So one of the things we're going to do two principal things as a result of this additional surge in interest in what's going on at Camelot. Number one, we're launching a program to help to restore the high streets and the villages of England.
Oh, brilliant.
Which I think is very needed.
Well, they're gone. I went to Berkhamsted the other day. It's the first time.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I agree with you.
Yeah,
I think they've been destroyed.
It's the first time, Berkhamsted, first time in about 5 years I saw a British high street that I thought, you know what, it looks all right here. That's, Berkhamsted?
Yeah.
That's it. I haven't been to one in years that looked like that. That's what they used to, and I went, oh my God. And I said to my wife, who's not from here, and I said, that's what it used to look like in a lot of high streets.
Yes. No, I mean, they have been completely atrophied. And I think there is sufficient concern about this to start to lobby local businessmen to support the local high street. Because if the high street goes in a town, the life of the town dies. I mean, look at the number of places where you can't find a post office. You can't find a bank now. All the banks are leaving. And that's something that we're going to be doing. And the other thing that we're creating is really something of a club for the people that enjoy free speech, that believe freedom of ideas is important. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming something of a network, which is nice.
So alongside maybe the Free Speech Union or something, they're very good as well.
Well, I mean, Toby Young has done unbelievable. Of course, Lord Young now, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. Well, quite.
So there we go. I mean,
well, good on him. Do you think your friend Nigel? Do you think reform will actually stand a chance in 3 or 4 years down the line? So is that what you said?
Still a long time. It's a long time. There's still, a lot of teething pains. But he came to Cornwall yesterday, and I think 70 people turned up to an impromptu meeting so he could meet some of the local candidates. This is in a small little village of Camelford. The feedback was extraordinary. What we read about on Twitter doesn't seem to be affecting anybody on the doors,
regarding the sort of infighting.
Well, yes. I mean, it doesn't seem to be affecting people on the doors. And I don't think it is affecting people, certainly down in Cornwall. Mm-hmm. So in the short term, I think you could see something interesting happen with the local elections. And momentum in politics builds very slowly, as you know. I mean, it takes years to create a party. And Nigel's been on this journey for 35 years. Mm-hmm. He's a bit of a he describes himself as a sort of a John Wesley type of a character. He is constantly campaigning.
It's very slowly and then suddenly very quickly.
Yeah, very. It's like all great successes. Slowly. Then all of a sudden, but you have to, even if you take your work that you do, you've been working at your craft and honing your craft, and then all of a sudden now you're a super well-known podcaster, and
people do say
everybody's clamoring to get on your show. Apparently.
You get people saying, you must be being paid by Mossad. How could you possibly? You've come from nowhere, and you go, you have no idea. I've been doing this years now. They don't realize. They don't see the start, and I didn't see the grassroots of Nigel Farage. He seemed to me to pop onto the scene before Brexit, at which point he was made a figure of fun by the legacy media. And I didn't know much about the political situation back then. And I probably looked at it and went, oh God, yeah, what a silly bloke or whatever. And now he's already probably considered the most influential politician in recent British history.
Well, what people don't realise, what I am aware of, because I know the Trump family, how much President Trump respects him. And I know this from not talking to him about it. I know this from other members of the family and people that are very close in to Trump in the United States. And they are actually very good friends. And they hang out and they sort of chit-chat. And, forgive me if I won't share those stories, but some of them are just, they're very, very close friends. And so he has taken on the mantle, really, of an international statesman, which actually is not relevant for the local elections. And it's probably not that relevant for a general election, because I think people are concerned about where we go today. But were he to make it into number 10, it would be nice to think that we had somebody in there that had an inkling in relation to foreign policy. That would be a welcome change.
And he would then certainly cement his space as the most influential politician in recent times.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of his soft power now, it is very high. And people listen. And it also, what I've noticed is he's become much more. He's come into his power in a way as a politician. He really understands his situation, but that's not to say that there's still a lot of challenges ahead, and he needs all the help he can get, frankly. Yeah. So,
in the sort of insider baseball, I know you're saying door to door, people don't follow this stuff, but on YouTube and Twitter they do, and there's a lot of infighting. There's the Rupert Lowe stuff. Ben Habib's just formed another party. I got a lot of people. I guess some people are watching this going, "Gosh, why won't Nigel?" come down harder and say we're going to do some deporting of illegal migrants. Other people are going, gosh, thank God he's being more reasonable and maybe can bring in the centre. And then other people are going, gosh, well, why are Ben and Rupert? How is this all? Is this going to affect the vote? So I guess that's not really a question as such, as I'm just sort of throwing things at you. No. What are your thoughts?
Well, obviously I'm close friends with Rupert as well as Nigel. I like them both, and my preference would be that they all get on.
Absolutely.
I think that, there's plenty of work to do, and they each have their capacities. But, I'm not very deeply involved with the Reform Party. I happen to be a personal friend of Nigel's, and I'm a personal friend of Rupert's. But I do see the challenges that this country faces. And I do see that they both have a remarkable contribution to make. Actually, when I saw Nigel yesterday, we didn't discuss it. So it's something that is, it will just work its way through, I'm sure. And as they have a saying in Vegas, let the chips fall where they may.
What about... we can't continue this situation with 4-star hotels, and I saw a contract saying, and they sort of the politicians denied that it was meant this way, and I think it was while the Tories were in government, it was a contract signed saying that illegal migrants must have at least 4-star accommodation. Now it was, I think it was in the Guardian. This is fact checked. I know it will surprise a lot of people listening. It is out there, and they say no, that was just a default contract, and we didn't actually apply it. And I'm sure they didn't, because they couldn't find enough 4-star hotels, but they found enough of them, and the fact it was there in the first place, that sort of plays into my concern about the deep state and just the kind of nonsense they're putting into contracts and things. This can't continue. But illegal migrants are coming on boats every day. We can't shoot them and let them drown. That would be horrific. They're going to come here, but at the same time, they can't just be homeless on the street. What do we do?
Well, I think we have to decide that we are a nation of laws. We have to decide upon what the sane laws should be, and then we need to enforce them. And what I thought was very interesting, I don't know if you watched Bukele's meeting with President Trump last night.
Bits of it.
Well, Bukele has taken a very, very firm view.
You should say who he is actually.
Well, he's the president of El Salvador.
Yeah.
And he has taken it. El Salvador was one of the most violent crime places in the world.
The gangs.
Tattoo
gangs.
Yeah. And he basically confronted the elements of that country that were innately evil. And he's locked them up. And now he's helping Trump in relation to the MS-13 gangs that are in the United States. And he said, some people say that I have incarcerated thousands. He said, the way I look at it is I've liberated millions. And I think Trump rather liked that idea. He said he was going to plagiarize it.
I saw that. How do you? Who told you that? I'm going to take that.
Yeah. So no, I think that is a very. That's an example of a leader that is dealing with criminals who have committed heinous acts in an appropriate way. And I think on the one hand, you have to be humane to your prisoners, but you do have to be firm.
But it would mean then, I presume, arresting 600 people per day who arrive on our shores and filling up already overcrowded prisons.
Well, as I say, whatever the law is, one should decide upon what is the sane law and apply that law.
Well, the law is you can't come over to this country without being welcomed in. And by applying it, that would be putting them in prisons, which are already completely overrun. They'll have to turn hotels into prisons.
I mean, I don't know what the logistics are of actually turning the boats around.
They say it's hard, don't they? It's so hard because we sit here and we talk about the theoretical, don't we? And then try to actually imagine someone on a choppy waters in the middle of the sea, freezing cold, real mad stuff happening, and you go over there, and can you sort of tow them back to France constantly? And what sort of cost will that be to the British taxpayer constantly having to have boats to do so? But I don't see necessarily why not.
Andrew, I think perhaps you'd better sort out the solution to that.
What we'd do is we'd get a rope and sort of get the dinghy and drive.
No, but it is joking apart. I think one has to decide upon a policy. And the other thing is as well is what would the great British public, in their wisdom, agree to? Because we do live in a democracy, and we do live in a society where, you know, what is it that people really want to see? Do they want to see the boats turned around? Do they want to see, what is it that the people of this country actually want? And perhaps more work needs to be done on that. You know, perhaps our government hasn't actually listened properly. I have noticed, and of course, social media isn't an indicator of what the people actually think. Sometimes you get, for instance, on Twitter, you know, we follow the people that we agree with, and we tend to be in a bubble. But it is interesting that a firmer hand seems to be getting traction.
Yeah, people are fed up.
I think they are.
And it's something that you talk about predicting the future. I don't believe I did. I suppose I was 15 or something, so I wasn't very political. But it just felt like there was this whole London Olympics, Britain is multiculturalism, very exciting. We were so excited about. We look back now and go, oh gosh, no, you know, the Blair stuff, and everybody was up in arms, the Spice Girls and the Union Jack, and everyone's coming over. How exciting! And somehow didn't seem to. Tommy Robinson did, and many others probably listening to the show did, but many of us didn't see this. Even though it was inevitable. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. It is crazy. And I think one of the things that we should look at is where did that programming or where did that planning truthfully originate? And I think once we get to the root of that and we work out, well, who was it that really came up with these ideas?
But every country's done it. I mean, in Europe.
Yeah. So it's lockstep. So somebody must have come up with this, with these concepts. or these ideas of multiculturalism. And if you was to ask the average person in this country, has multiculturalism been a success or a failure? Mm-hmm. It would be an interesting answer to know what people think.
I wonder how much it's just due to sort of conflation of words and semantics, because I think most people view multiculturalism, the word, to mean multiracial. So if you say, oh, no, I'm not sure about this multiculturalism, people go, oh, you don't like black people, do you? And you're like, well, hang on.
Right.
No, that's far from what we believe. And unfortunately, I feel like the politicians have conflated those terms. And
yes,
it was very exciting, this idea of like, hey, we're not racist like those horrible Nazis from the 1930s. We love everybody. Everybody should come over here, without considering, well, hang on, no, because there are different religions and cultures and things that will upend the ability for our society to function.
Well, can I just say, Andrew, that I think that's one of the reasons why podcasts like this are incredibly valuable, because they do allow a fleshing out of ideas. You are listening to all different opinions and viewpoints. And funnily enough, the validation of free speech and the standing up for it is probably the thing, above all other things, that will flush all of this out into the open and will lance the boil of it all.
Yes. I mean, free speech is now going to be up against, it's up against a kind of authoritarian wokeness the last few years, anti-free speech, which is absurd because they always talk about being on the right side of history. I don't believe there's anybody in history who is against free speech who's now perceived to have been on the right side of history. And Islamism, which if they were to, it feels like we have reform on one side and the other side is that independent new political party of Islamism. Essentially, they're not making any bones about it. That's what it is. I feel like they're going to go head to head next time. Are you concerned about growing Islamism in this country?
Well, I'm a great believer in religious freedom, so I respect all religions, and in my family, we have many different types of religions. So I think everyone is free to believe what it is that they want to believe. However, if any religion breaks the law of the land, well, then that obviously needs to be confronted full on. And I think where you have religious political parties, I think you end up with a problem. Whichever religion it is, if there was a Christian, to be fair, politics in America can get quite religious.
Yeah.
And I don't think it serves them well. It certainly is very inspiring to people. But I favor keeping religion out of politics. And I think we'd be better off if we did. I think that's probably the saner approach, but then that's just my view. If somebody breaks a law, then whatever their religion is, they should be punished appropriately. And I don't get upset with somebody because of what their religion is.
Going back to your hotel, the staff must now be aware of what you've been speaking about and what was offered to you. Do they speak to you about it? Do they go, "Gosh, thank you"?
Well, they were when they heard about it, they were quite shocked, and it became quite real to them. And actually, this Christmas, we have a little bit of a tradition where the staff, it's actually very touching always, but they always buy my wife and I a very nice Christmas present.
Oh.
And this year, when they presented us with the Christmas gift, our manager there gave such a moving speech. And I think they did really appreciate what occurred, but also the people from the local community have been have been very, very kind, incredibly kind. And I think a tremendous amount of good is going to come out of this little story or event or whatever you call it. And I think it's tapped into that sort of the basic goodness of humanity, this idea that we don't all have to be, grabbing the next pound on the table, and that actually community is there to value and cherish. And if we work hard to protect those communities, especially in the countryside, I don't know if you've followed what's going on with the farmers in Britain, but you have farmers on the point of suicide because their land, they can't hand it over to their children. I mean, I know a lot of the local farmers, and I've heard stories that a couple of them are considering, or a couple of them did kill themselves because they did not want to, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to hand over the land to their loved ones. And if you've been a farmer your whole life, you can understand it. I mean, you're going to lose whatever you lose in inheritance tax. So is this level of what I'd like to see is parliamentarians and people in government that actually genuinely do care, and they're not just up there in Westminster milling around to the next ghastly glass of cheap white wine that they're hunting down.
Just robots.
Well, they really are. They really are. I had the opportunity to work in the House of Commons once, and I was extremely disappointed because, the lights are there, but there's no one home.
Yeah.
They actually, with a few obviously notable exceptions, but it seems as if they come up to Westminster and, they get full of themselves, A little bit of fame does very odd things to people.
It's an unfortunate truism that you'd almost want the country to be ruled by someone who would never want to rule it.
Absolutely. You should give power to people that couldn't be less interested in it, and that genuinely care about the job that they're doing.
And putting British people first, whoever those British people are, black, white, whatever, if no one cares.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think you touched on multiculturalism. I think the varied characters and life that has come into this country has been a tremendous blessing. I mean, you probably won't believe this, but when I was younger, I went to one of the first ever rap clubs in central London. And it was called, I forget what it was called the Language Lab. And it was the first time anybody in London had heard a rap song. And it was phenomenal. And so I think the extraordinary value of having many different cultures and nations that are part of Great Britain today is extraordinary. But can we let in too many young males, observably of sort of, that they tend to be single, and is that right? Have we gone too far?
Well, particularly those who hate our culture.
Well, if they do, that would be even worse.
I believe many do. That's the impression I have. This is not the same.
Well, it would seem that way because some of them do come here and then they take actions that are against the culture. And I think it's very, very serious. I mean, I'm really underplaying the seriousness of it. It is tremendously serious. But I think that's why we need to, value our ability to vote. These council elections, by the way, they are very, very important. If I don't know if I'm allowed to give Nigel's party a plug.
Yeah, I don't know why not.
Well,
I'm not the BBC.
I think it's worth thoroughly looking into what the Reform Party's doing, because it's not just about Nigel anyway. If you look into it, it's a very, very broad church of what I can see very, very caring people who have done the local fellow in my area has done a tremendous amount of work. And these people do care about our country. And I think these are the people that will turn it around.
So that's reform. Is there somewhere, before I ask, I've got one more question, but is there somewhere you'd like to send people watching, perhaps to your hotel website or something?
Well, I mean, please do come to Camelot Castle.
We'll put a link.
Yeah. For those of you that like treacle tart or crumpet, we all like a bit of crumpet, and we all like a bit of treacle tart I like. And so if there are any tart lovers out there or crumpet appreciators.
These all sound like euphemisms.
People have said that.
Lovely bit of tart. Crumpet and tart.
People have said that. But there we go. We do a lovely afternoon tea. Do come by. You can see that the website is camelotcastle.com.
We'll put that link in the description. Who's a heretic you admire?
Well, I've thought long and hard about this, and it's a bloody good question. And I'm going to give my vote. It's a theoretical construct, actually, but it's a very real person. But it's unnamed. It is the truly fair British citizen that absolutely knows right from wrong, that absolutely knows that they love their country, that they really want it to do well, and they are part of our culture, and they are the innate, they are not the tomato thrower, they're not the flag waver, they are the quintessence of the silent majority. And I think that being that today is as heretical as it gets. And I think it's an extremely valuable piece on the chessboard.
I think that's a wonderful heretic, a very unique one. I just hope that silent minority starts to vote. And I suppose they do.
I think they do. As I said, a friend of mine said once that we are an 11th hour nation and we tend to rally at about 11:45. But I think we're approaching the hour. We're approaching the hour. And I do think that it is time. It is time.
People, please go and check out Camelot Castle. We'll have a little link down below and see all of, just type in John Mappin, see him talking about things like this, because he's wonderful on all of this. And you're on Twitter?
Yes.
Twitter, find him on Twitter as well. We'll put that as well down there. Hit the like button. Keep watching this channel.